I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 9 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration. We have 2 panels of witnesses today, and for the last 15 minutes of our second hour, I'm going to go in camera so that we can discuss committee business. So in terms of just a few general comments off the top, today's meeting is taking place in hybrid format, so we do have someone joining us by video conference. And so I'm going to make a few comments. For those that are participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you're not speaking. For those that are participating in video conference or Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, you could select the appropriate channel for interpretation. You could choose either Floor, English, or French. And of course, for those that are in the room, and these remarks are specific to our witnesses, you can use the earpiece if you need to listen to either French or English. I have 2 cards, which I will whip out of my knapsack while one of you guys starts speaking. If I hold up a yellow card, it means you have 1 minute left. Red means your time is up, and your microphone goes off. Always kindly wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. And please, 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 and please do not speak over each other. It will be very hard for our translators to translate, and it makes their job very difficult. Of course, please ensure that all comments are addressed through the chair. And members, as you know, raise your hand if you wish to speak. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best as we can. And I thank you very much in advance for your cooperation. And I want to say a warm welcome to Mr. Fergus, who is here in place of Ms. Sodhi. You are warmly welcome, sir. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on September 16, 2025, the committee is resuming its study on Canada's immigration system. It is with great pleasure that I announce our witnesses for the first hour of today's meeting. As an individual, we have Mario Bellissimo, lawyer, certified specialist, Bellissimo Law Group Professional Corporation. I don't think that you are, I think you're someone that's well known to this committee, sir. And so welcome to you. Hong Kong Watch. From Hong Kong Watch, we have Eileen Caverly, co-founder and chair. Welcome. And Stats Canada, we have Laurent Martel, director for the Centre for Demography. Welcome. And then via video conference, we have Ron Gravel, Director General, and nice to welcome you as well. So each of you, so each as Mario, Hong Kong Watch, and Stats Canada will have up to 5 minutes each for opening remarks, after which we will proceed with rounds of questions. So I'm going to ask Mr. Bellissimo to start us off for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chairs, honourable members. It's a pleasure to appear again today before the committee. So Canada's immigration system stands at an inflection point. It faces many challenges. Those specific to my comments today include over 2 million applications pending and processing times extending into decades. The absence of timely communication, no redress for minor issues, and years of digital stampedes have created cascading effects, duplication, declining transparency, and mounting pressure on tribunals, courts, and Parliament itself. These problems point to a widening gap between policy ambition and administrative capacity and delivery. IRCC has made real progress through digital transformation, client service reforms that reflect genuine commitment. The issue, however, is not commitment or dedication, but architecture and delivery. So this study arrives at a pivotal moment. Our brief that will hopefully be before the members once translated draws upon the CBA's 2025 Law, Technology and Accountability Report, Reimagining Canadian Immigration in the 21st Century. It has 100 recommendations to strengthen governance, fairness, and transparency, a must-read for those committed to creating a new, co-creating a new way forward. And I encourage the committee to hear directly from the CBA. So our brief builds on that foundation as well as others, COSTI, CD House, TMU, Broadbent, and we put forward 10 fiscally realistic recommendations to make immigration delivery more transparent, predictable, and accountable. So at the heart of our proposals are two imperatives often seen as competing, but in fact complementary: facilitation and enforcement. Facilitation will demand a new ethos of communication, transparency, and timely delivery at IRCC. Enforcement must be firm but proportionate, focused on integrity and not control. Bill C-212, the Strong Borders Act, illustrates the risk of overcorrection. It consolidates broad executive powers without adequate parliamentary oversight and clear procedural safeguards. It does risk deepening the very stability it seeks to correct, with serious consequences, including constitutional vulnerabilities. We call for more parliamentary oversight, widespread consultation and collaboration, a statutory immigration ombudsperson, so applicants, for example, can seek redress without turning to the federal court simply to learn at what stage their application is at. We also urge binding service standards through the Services Fee Act, a universal expression of interest model to transparently align application intake with delivery, ending the cycle of runaway inventories, security check delays, and siloed decision-making. For example, families in need of care for elderly loved ones should not wait years for the support to live with dignity. We cannot allow false narratives around immigration to take hold. We must better communicate the essential role that immigrants play at every level of our society to push back against division, hate, and otherness. Parliament should link levels to indicators in housing, healthcare, and labor while ensuring the vitality of Francophone communities across Canada, preserving both growth and cohesion. Also, we make suggestions towards an enhanced refugee system that will protect humanitarian commitments while reinforcing timely border integrity. And as technology reshapes immigration decision-making, we need stronger legislative AI and automation oversight and digital equity, as well as statutory recognition of counsel to safeguard fairness and due process in the immigration world is essential. These measures reflect global best practices and would free resources through smarter upstream reform. They do not require major new spending, just enhanced coordination, accountability, and openness across departments, across ministries, tribunals, and courts. Before closing, I want to acknowledge the dedication of many government officials, settlement agencies, and legal professionals who continue to deliver under immense pressure. Their commitment is not in question, but they need a stronger framework, one consequential to all current and future Canadians. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bellissimo. Excellent time. And next we will hear from Ms. Caverly from Hong Kong Watch, please.
Chair, honorable members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to testify today. The Hong Kong Pathway is a special and temporary public policy launched in 2021 in response to Hong Kong's national security law. This policy was designed to provide a lifeline for Hong Kongers seeking freedom and safety. Alongside the UK BNO visa, it represents a remarkable collaboration between Canada and the UK, two countries united by shared democratic values and compassion for those seeking refuge. However, the Hong Kong Pathway was placed under Humanitarian and Compassionate Category, HNC, along with several other special public policy. The immigration structure is unsustainable. All public policy, whether for Hong Kong, Afghanistan, Ukraine, and Sudan, should have their own dedicated admission quotas, rather than being restricted by the limited HNC quota. HNC admission target for 2025 is only 10,000. As of this year, more than 20,000 Hong Kong Pathway applications remain in the backlog, and fewer than 2,000 PR approval has been approved in 2025. According to RCC website, those who apply after July 2024 now face estimated wait time of more than 10 years, a sharp contrast to 6.5 months back in February 2024, when priority processing was still in place. The backlog of PR approval has created uncertainty and stress for those whose work permit have expired. I spoke to a mother in Markham whose work permit has been pending for more than 8 months, leaving her 10-year-old son unable to attend school. I have seen families in tears in my community center after open work permit were wrongly rejected. One applicant who was expecting a baby even lost her job and her health care coverage because of a missing form 5707, a document that was not listed on the checklist. These are not isolated cases. They show human costs of slow, inconsistent processing and the heavy psychological toll placed on those waiting in limbo. There's also a significant economic impact. Without PR, Hong Kongers cannot transfer their NPF retirement savings from Hong Kong to Canada. So I testified in the committee last year about this. When an average balance of around $45,000 per account, billions of dollars trapped in Hong Kong right now, funds that could have helped this family settle and be reinvested in Canadian economy, create businesses, and also create jobs. Moreover, Hong Kong-trained doctors cannot practice in Canada without PR status. Yet, without work experience, Canadian work experience, they cannot qualify through economic stream express entry, even as Canada faces a national shortage of doctors. Hong Kong Pathway was established as a label for those seeking freedom, and Canada must ensure this label reaches shore and fulfill its promise. Here are my recommendations. Ensure all remaining Action C quota for Hong Kong Pathway are used this year and allocate additional slots to clear the backlog. Allocate economic class quota to qualify H&C applicants and lower the point threshold similar to professions such as healthcare and STEM, so to fast-track their application. Grant AIP, approval in principle status, earlier in the process, allowing applicants immediate access to work, healthcare, and education. This will stabilize families, support employers, and prevent loss of status due to administrative delay. In addition, fix the system errors that have led to wrongful rejections and establish an appeal system. Finally, allocating 20,000 admission target to the Hong Kong Pathway will be a win-win solution, upholding Canadians' humanitarian value, unlocking billions in private savings to boost our economy, and reaffirming Canada's commitment to the Hong Kong community, which has contributed immensely to our country for the last 4 decades. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That literally took you to exactly 5 minutes, so thank you very much. Mr. Martel, will it be you or will it be Mr. Gravel who will be
It's going to be my colleague, Ron Gravel.
Okay. So, Mr. Gravel, if you can maybe just say hello, hello, and then we'll start your time just to make sure we can hear you properly. No, we cannot hear you. Perhaps you can unmute yourself or turn up the volume. Disconnect and reconnect. Say a prayer. It always happens. It's the one. Make sure everything's turned on. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Just, do you want to keep on saying hello, hello, just in case we happen to hear you? No, no, not yet. It might have to be you, Mr. Martel.
Mon collègue me texte que ce serait l'opérateur qui aurait...
My colleague was going to speak, but I think it's your technician that may have put us in mute.
I am currently looking to the speech. I will call to my colleague Ron Gravel maybe to send it to me. I should be able to find it somewhere. Let me finalize this.
Do you want to... We asked him. You've unplugged and replugged, right? Yes. It's like a computer, you know. Do you have the email of Mr. Martel?
Here you go.
Oh, they're our last witness.
It's our last witness, sadly.
Is Mr. Martel able to take questions? Just
doesn't
because
have
we're
the
going to
text.
lose.
He doesn't have the text of the presentation.
But you have the text. Can you give him your thing?
I have his email.
I'm just wondering if we could just proceed to questions.
I can probably deliver the 5-minute talks if needed. Ouais, je crois que oui. Ouais.
Ah,
Hello?
You. Okay, okay, let's get going, please. And if you're able to do it in less than 5 minutes, we'd be grateful.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much for this invitation to contribute to your immigration, to the work on immigration and citoyenneté. À titre d'agence statistique nationale, le mandat de Statistique Canada est de recueillir et de publier des données et des analyses objectives et indépendantes.
Statistic Canada is to provide data on population, including immigration. Immigration data used by our agency comes from several sources. Every 5 years, a population census provides a snapshot of the immigration population, which is a very important partner. We also do surveys and sampling throughout 5 years. Every 5 years, this allows us to get a better grasp on the immigrant population in Canada. For example, in 1921, the survey indicated that 23% of persons living in Canada were born abroad, and that this proportion increased to 47% in Toronto census metropolitan area. The census also provided a description of the characteristics of the immigrant population, including socioeconomic, family, and linguistic. Between census, we realize quarterly estimates that attract changes of size of Canadian population, including permanent immigrants and non-permanent residents. In response to legal obligations, these data are also used by IRCC to track the achievement of targets set out in their annual plan. The most recent population estimates show that after 2 years of the most recent population growth in 23-24, about 3% annually. This growth slowed over the last 12 months, mainly due to a decrease of 100,000 people in the number of non-permanent residents. It's important to note that Stats Canada population of non-permanent residents differs from that of IRCC's temporary residents and asylum seekers, as the two agencies have different objectives. Our objective is statistical. In order to accurately measure the size and characteristics of the Canadian population, while IRCC is responsible for administering various immigration populations and programs. The longitudinal immigration database is another important source of data that provides a better understanding of immigrant economic outcomes, labor market integration trajectories, and income. It's a link between IRCC's administrative data and tax data from CRA. Our agency's surveys also collect other info that is not usually available in census or administrative data, such as health, volunteering and participation, victimization, social cohesion, and social relations. Finally, Stats Canada produces and disseminates population projections that are used as a planning tool to federal departments. IRCC in particular uses these projections in planning further immigration levels, including Francophone immigration as part of the objectives of the Modernized Official Languages Act. I'll conclude by mentioning we pay close attention to the quality of these because it could conclude while the agency is not responsible for the immigration system or migration policies, it works in cooperation with key partners to continuously improve our stats programs. To this end, Statistics Canada has acquired data on entries into and exits from country from the CBSA in recent months. This data is currently being evaluated to understand how we can contribute to further improving the measurement of non-permanent residents and immigrant populations in Canada. Thanks for your attention, and we're ready to respond to your questions, whether it's myself or one of my colleagues that answer. Thank you very much.
That I will say thanks to all of you for your remarks. We're now going to begin with the first round of questions, which will be a total of 6 minutes. So we start with Ms. Rempel-Garner, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll direct my questions to Statistics Canada. And the broad topic is, as a legislator, trying to understand the data on which the government is using to set immigration levels, which I now understand will be embedded within the budget, the federal budget this year. To either rep from StatsCan, does your agency track how many temporary residents, I suppose you use the term non-permanent residents, does your agency track how many non-permanent residents access health care on an annual basis?
Merci pour la question.
Thank you for that question. Well, first thing, Stats Canada uses quarterly surveys, and we use it by different departments, including IRCC, to respond to certain needs. We provide this information to the public in Canada, and
If you could answer, do you track how many non-permanent residents access Canadian health care or health care in Canada on an annual basis?
Nous avons des différentes statistiques sur la...
we have different statistics on health, hospitalization rates for various categories of the population. And in Statistics Canada, we don't have data available on the costs incurred for these services.
How many non-permanent residents access health care? Like just numbers?
No, I don't.
You
J'ai
don't.
pas ces, non,
Thank you.
j'ai pas ces chiffres-là
Okay,
dans
it took me
la
2
tête,
minutes
non.
to get there.
No, we don't have those numbers.
How many births occur to non-permanent residents on an annual basis?
Les décès des résidents non permanents sont inclus aux estimations démographiques, oui.
So sorry, the translation didn't come through. Can we pause?
Births from non-permanent residents are included in demographic estimates, yes.
In
And-
estimates.
And in the birth are recorded in Canada every year.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, and for
Restarted.
non-permanent residents, this would be not visitors to Canada, this would be, okay.
Exact.
How many births occurred to non-permanent residents in the last year?
J'ai pas le chiffre en tête actuellement.
I
je
don't
peux-
have the number offhand, but I can't give you the information. Yes, we'll follow up with that. Yes, we will.
Do you track how many individuals are currently in Canada on an expired work permit or visa?
Le nombre précis, non.
For a specific number, no. But people who are in the process of renewing these work permits are part of the calculation.
Or on expired work. A recent Sun article discussed that Canada's population growth might be 3 times higher than Ottawa has estimated because a large number of people who were supposed to be in Canada or leave the country aren't being tracked. How hard would it be for your agency to get a list of expired permits from IRCC each week and run it against your entry and exit system?
La base de données d'entrée,
The in country, out of country is a Statistics Canada. We do receive IRCC on a monthly basis, but weekly we don't have an agreement with between StatsCan and IRCC.
There was an article on Blog Toronto. It cited a video that you were in that you said Canada's population is skyrocketing to 42 million people. Based on your analysis, does Canada have the adequate infrastructure to accept a continued level of temporary residence that we've seen in recent year? And by infrastructure, I'm talking particularly about housing and healthcare. And how would you know?
Je peux répondre à cela que la croissance démographique du Canada entre
The population growth in Canada 23 to 24 was almost 3%, which is quite high when we compare that to other countries, which is a big challenge for the infrastructure in health and housing in Canada.
A lot of analysis suggests that wage growth for temporary residents is quite a bit lower than permanent residents. Would that be a correct assessment based on your analysis?
Je ne pourrais pas confirmer cette affirmation.
Well, I
Ce que je
can't confirm that, but we know that between 2020 and 2021, immigration numbers was in fact decreasing.
Continued, based on that extrapolation, if Canada continued to accept high levels of temporary residents or residents that are unable to get credentialed, would that continue to be a drag on wages and as such economic growth?
Je ne pourrais pas répondre à cette question-là. Ce que je
Well, I
peux
really
dire,
can't answer that question, but the number of non-permanent residents which are admitted to Canada has been falling for the last 3 quarters, which, of course, modifies the proportion.
Like year over year, or perhaps not year over year, but they're high for what Canada can support. So if we have a delta, as your analysis suggests, between wage growth for temporary residents and a delta on per capita GDP growth, has the government asked you for any advice on how to model out whether or not the Canadian economy does actually benefit from this bit of a myth that we need high levels of immigration to sustain economic growth?
That's time. A very quick response, please.
on n'a pas eu de requête en ce sens. Ce que je
We
peux
haven't
dire,
had
c'est que
any
la-
requests for that, but the demographic growth in Canada has slowed considerably over the last 3 quarters. And if we extrapolate that over years, the population might fall. This particular group of population might be less than 1.5% compared to 2024, which was 3%.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks to all the witnesses for coming before the committee today. My first question is for Ms. Calverley from Hong Kong Watch. From your organization's perspective, what are the main factors contributing to the processing delays in the Hong Kong Pathway Program? Is it primarily a resource issue within IRCC, security screening bottlenecks, or document verification challenges just specific to Hong Kong?
Thank you very much. The problem actually is not resources, it's the emission targets. So very obvious because a lot of Hong Kongers, they have received AIP. So the application actually ready to go, just need to have the slot, the quota. And then IRCC will send them CPP, and then they can start to become like a PR, so the process. I think the problem was like when the whole temporary public policy started in 2021, we were told that there's no limit. To me, it's like, how could you possibly, there's no limit? There must be a limit. But there's no limit for work permits, or you come in as a student, but then after you fulfill the requirement, you have to apply for PR via Stream A or Stream B, but then there's a limit. Suddenly, there's a limit. And we were told the limit actually, like for this year, 10,000. But that's also cover other special policy came after Hong Kong Pathway, like for Sudan, Ukraine, and also Afghanistan. So all this public policy, they should have its own allocation rather than all the new created public policy put under HNC. HNC always with very limited emission target, like last year, 13,800, this year, 10,000. Next year could be 5,000. Right? But then we got like at least 50, 60,000, maybe more in the stream under HNC. So it's unsustainable. And I think for Hong Konger, this is like they didn't expect because when they apply, if Canada say that the limit only 10,000, so first come, first serve, so that's it. That's much easier, right? But then there's no limits. And then when they're here, a lot of them, they spent 4 years here already. They pay taxes working, and then they study, they pay tuition fee, and then they apply H&C. And they start from there now, we need to wait for 10 years. So this is really a big problem for all the applicants. And also they are on only temporary work permits.
What impacts have these delays had on the applicants whose applications are in the system, for example, on their employment or study opportunities in regards to family unification or personal safety? And how have these differed between the open work permit and permanent residence streams?
So all the delay is huge to them because as temporary resident, you can sometimes, some jobs, they only take PR. And some of the applicants, they are high flyer. They're from U.S., Ivy League from U.S., so Hong Konger, and they make $260,000, paying $80,000 taxes. They need to travel around the world for that job. But because she is still temporary resident, so she cannot fly around. So without PR, this kind of job actually not possible for Hong Konger. And also, when the work permit will expire within 3 years, that's a big trouble for these people because a lot of them, like the work permit expire next year, they have applied this year. And then they rely on maintained status. But some employer, I think, need RCC education. A lot of employers don't take maintained status. They don't understand that. They only look at your work permit, so it's expired, that's it. And also, like some applicants, they may change jobs. They may, move to another job. It's not possible. Yeah, when your work permit less than 6 months, a lot of employer won't take that. And also with ILCC errors as well, they reject them because of LMIA. So like for Hong Kong Pathway, you don't need LMIA. But they were rejected, no appeal system. So I think appeal system is important. Or someone, they have not submitted a form 5707. Actually, it's not on the checklist. They were rejected. And then they have to reapply again. That takes 8 months. So that's why a lot of family, they have no status in Canada. But they cannot go back to Hong Kong because of political reason or because they're still waiting for PR. You're not supposed to leave the country. Where can they go? They have no legal status. But waiting for PR another 10 years, a lot of Hong Kong...
1 minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have 1 minute. So just keeping in mind that resources are limited and there are many urgent cases around the world. So what specific policy or operational changes would you recommend to reduce the processing time and restore confidence in this program for the Hong Kongers?
I think because a lot of Hong Kong are going Y Stream B, they have work experience, but they cannot meet for example, express entry for 500. So I would recommend that we can lower down that to like matching healthcare or STEM, STEM. So then we can fast track at least a few thousand applicants can go via express entry.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Zaid. Thank you, Ms. Calvary. Prochaine, on a Monsieur Brunet-Dusset pour 6 minutes.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to the witnesses for appearing today. Ms. Keverly, I'm very pleased to see you. The transfer of candidates' Hong Kong pathways towards the express entry, would that attenuate or relieve the pressure? Ms. Kimberley, the transfer of admissible Hong Kong pathway, would that, towards express entry, would that be a partial solution to this problem?
But this is the best solution because I understand that the leveling plan will be cut down, but maybe not economic. So, and also a lot of Hong Kongers, they can contribute economically very well. They're entrepreneurial. So I think I understand quite a lot of them. They get points around 450. So like 2 years ago, you can go through EE, but now it's around 500. The point is very high right now. So I think this is a good way to fast track some of the applicants. And also, I think this is the new government's goal to help with our economy. So they want young professionals to contribute in the economy. So I think like this group of people is, yeah, possibly is the best way to have some economic allocation to clear the backlog.
Vous parlez beaucoup d'impact économique.
You mentioned economic impact quite a bit, and I concur with you. Perhaps you could tell us the significance of the Canadian economy. If one option would be that the points should reflect the contribution of the candidates, stability of employment, for example. Is that one example that you could use?
Des Hong Kong.
Impact, the economic impact of your Hong Kongers. Can you associate the number of points to the economic contribution these people are making?
Category. So now the ICC lowered that to 470. So I think we can also allow HNC applicants to go through DE with 470, for example. And for STEM, so that is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics group. So I think their points are around 460. So the government can allocate this group of professionals with lower points. So why can't they create one system to allow HNC applicants with similar categories? So we can say HNC applicant, no matter like what public policy, Ukraine or Hong Kong. So if you meet 450, 460, you can go via EE. So that is another way to clear the HNC backlog.
Je veux revenir sur les MPF parce que vous avez eu l'an passé ou en tout cas dans les derniers
I'd
mois.
like to come back to the study that we conducted on the retained numbers. Can you tell us what percentage that might be? 20% for the Canadian economy, the fact that they could not withdraw their money from their accounts.
EF is very important because a lot of Hong Kongers, they try to withdraw the money from the retirement savings, but they cannot because without permanent residency, proving to the Hong Kong Monetary Authority or to our financial institution like Manulife and Sun Life, they won't let you withdraw the money. So you need to have PR. I think like we testified, we talked about that, and also we have Manulife, executive coming here. They make it very clear, without proof that they are moving here permanently, they cannot withdraw the money. So it's a huge amount of money because 40,000 per account. And we are talking about 40 to 60,000 people. We're talking about billions of Canadian dollars that can be transferred from Hong Kong to Canada. And that will really can help our economy.
Et je me questionne par rapport au fait que finalement ces compagnies-là,
Well, I
Manulife,
note that these companies, Manulife and Canada Life, respect the regulations, Hong Kong regulations, that they will not allow the individual policyholder to actually access their money. But even if it is involuntary, do these people respond to a transnational flow?
Canada need to fast track the Hong Kong pathway applicant because actually if Canada delay, they have to wait for 10 years. I don't think they can get the money from Hong Kong anymore. Because like we can see the experience like in the old days Soviet Union, like Poland. So you can go, but not your money. So it's another way of we call financial transnational repression. You can leave.
Thank you, Ms. Calverley.
but not your money.
Thank you, Ms. Calverley. Merci, Monsieur Brunel-Duceppe. So that
Thank you,
ends
Ms.
our...
Burnett said.
Now we are going into our second round, which is 5 minutes total. Our first questioner will be Mr. Michael Ma.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My questions are addressed to Ms. Calverley. When the Hong Kong Pathways program was launched in the summer of 2021, Hong Kongers were made a promise by the Liberal government. Many vulnerable families then used up their life savings to support the initial years in Canada, hoping that this was an investment in their future. Ms. Calverley, has the Liberal government made good on their promise on the legitimately vulnerable people in Hong Kong Pathways program?
Well, I think we are very grateful with this scheme. So I must say we are very grateful with the Liberal government. I think for the year, a lot of Hong Kongers came to Canada because of this scheme. We were very happy until last year. So a lot of Hong Kong people in our community very disappointed because we were told it's unlimited. Although it's not really a lot of people applying. Like, for example, the UK BNO scheme, we got 230,000 going to the UK. In Canada, now we got 20,000 cases stuck and another 12,000 already approved. We're talking about 32,000 cases. We're not talking about tons of people like flooding Canada. So actually, it's not a lot of people. So they choose Canada because they like Canada. They like Canada more than another country. So that's why they're here. And they contribute to the society already. Hong Kong people, they are very entrepreneurial. And they don't rely on the system or any benefit. They contribute and they pay taxes. So I would tell you that, reply to Michael Ma MP, they are very disappointed with the government right now, especially when they enter the submission date after. If you submit after July 2024, the answer is you have to wait for more than 10 years. How can they be happy?
Great, thank you. And so for those in the Hong Kong Pathways, net contributors to our society, as you mentioned earlier, they are paying international tuition, mortgages, or rents while waiting for PR. Does your organization have any data on the consolidated economic footprints of those in Hong Kong Pathways to Canada?
Majority of the new immigrants from Hong Kong via Hong Kong Pathway, they are young professionals. They're between 25 to 35. I would say we don't have official number, but they are, the contribution is very good because they are mainly in finance, IT, AI, and also engineering industry. So, and they paying high taxes. I think some unofficial number, they are paying average much higher taxes than average Canadian. And their average salary, even as a temporary resident, are much higher than the average in Canada.
Following that, I understand some of these applicants have purchased homes under the non-residence tax scheme, and they were promised a refund when they get their PR status. Can you speak to that, please?
This is very, very diversificating situation because before 2024 February, the application timeline is only 6 months. Like if back to 2022, 2 months. So that's why they purchase home and they pay extra taxes of over $200,000 to $500,000 taxes. And some of them, they already lost this money. And a lot more people will lose this kind of money next year if the PR application continue to be delayed. I feel so sorry for this family because they actually need this money for resettlement, or they can reinvest in businesses in Canada. But now all this money is stuck into the tax, and there's no rebate.
Okay, very quick question then. I was shocked to hear in the early October that processing time have now changed. I think you have mentioned. So under this Liberal government, can you walk us through the substantial changes in your organization in terms of the processing times that you're seeing?
Well, this is huge because like we will receive 500 emails in our system because people asking for help. because they say, I cannot wait for 10 years. So they need help. And also, especially if the work permit is about to expire, they're very frightened. And we have received quite a lot of rejection cases. We hope that we can pass on the rejection cases so that the MP can help them, because they need the status to continue to work.
Thank you, Ms. Caverly. Thank you very much. That's 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Ma. Next, we have Mr. Peter Fragiscatos.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to officials for being here today. Not officials, sorry. Thinking about the previous meeting. Thank you to witnesses for being here today. I'm going to ask Mr. Martel, and then I'll go to Mr. Bellissimo. Mr. Martel, you talked about a change in population recently, Canada's population going down substantially, and you also spoke about, when engaged with Ms. Rempel earlier, about the decline in the temporary in the non-permanent resident population. Could you speak to those points again? Could you offer more detail?
Yes, for sure. Canada experienced a record high. En fait, je m'exprime en anglais, mais je vais le formuler en français. Le Canada.
Canada has seen a record population growth in 23, 24, and it was as high as we've seen in The major part of this growth was linked to international immigration and not national birth here in Canada. For the last 3 quarters, October last year onward, we've had significant reduction of these numbers for temporary immigration. And those targets were reduced by IRCCC. Based on a reduction of a global population in Canada. In the second quarter of 2025, it was 0.1% as growth. But if that would be annual, that would be less than 0.5%. So the diminution of the Canadian population has really fallen in the last couple of months.
La décroissance du nombre de résidents non permanents.
Well, the reduction measured by our estimates over the last 3 quarters for the the study visas and temporary. So it's those main reasons for which the population of non-covered residents, or non-registered, if you will, has fallen in Canada.
Measures introduced to get to that result are having their effect.
Je ne peux pas commenter sur les politiques mises en place par le gouvernement.
Well, I shouldn't be commenting on Canadian government policies, but Statistics Canada has noted that the non-resident population has been falling for 3 quarters. And the objectives, which were explained to us by IRCC in their work plan, well, they're attaining their objectives.
Appearing at committee today, you put a number of things on the table, but I want to ask you about the digital turn that we're seeing, and there's many democracies taking that up in a variety of ways, trying to understand how the digital transformation, the revolution, in fact, that we're seeing, how that can make government services more efficient. Do you have thoughts or a recommendation to this committee specifically on that, how that could help in more efficient processing time, for example, at IRCC?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think we can look at the European Union AI Act, as well as Italy just passed a comprehensive package. My belief is that with legislative guardrails as to explainability, notice when it's used, plain language, the opportunities are immense for wonderful leveraging of technology. Much of what we're talking about today can be heavily alleviated with proper tracking when the technology allows that. But if we do it without those guardrails, you now have things like algorithmic impact assessments and privacy impact assessments, which are wonderful. But we need to get it to a mass universal level where all people can understand how it is benefiting, as opposed to creating a narrative of one that it is to be feared, when it's really the opposite if deployed ethically and innovatively.
Sir, I only have 30 seconds. I wish I had about 3 hours to talk to you about this. We'll have to follow up. But you would say then that Europe is ahead on this, and we can look to their models there. You mentioned artificial intelligence and what you seem to believe is a balance, an appropriate balance between AI, but also ensuring that privacy is maintained, things are done efficiently and effectively, but ultimately in a way that's congruent with democratic principles.
Yes, I think
Quick
we have
response,
some good,
please.
Yeah, I think we have some good things in Canada, like the some of the soft law and directives, but I think we need to codify those so they have teeth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bellissimo. Thank you, Mr. Fragiscaros. And now we have 2 minutes et demie à Monsieur Brunel-Duceppe. C'est à vous.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Monsieur Martel.
Thanks again. Mr. Martin, could you tell us why the non-resident numbers were not available in 2018 to 2023? No, I really can't answer that question. 2018 to 2023, the numbers were not available. Were there requests from the IRCC requesting you not to publish these on your website? No, not at all. I know that there were certain changes in the processing used by IRCC, but I don't think that there was that kind of a situation between 2018 and 23. Well, the numbers were not made public. Well, listen, there are two items. I think I just understood the nature of your question. The flow of permanent residents or the backlog as well, there were certain periods where we could not make them public, but the change, no, I understand that. I'm looking for a number that came back in 2023 and 2018. Well, that was the stock, if you will. There were changes in the methodology used and the algorithms as well. No communication between Statistics Canada and yourselves? Well, we share all our data with IRCC, but you didn't have any numbers for those years. I see a nod from the chair or the clerk. Could you not table with the committee all the communications between the IRCC and StatsCan as to the publication of these numbers for non-resident, non-permanent? If we were to ask you, if we were to make that request, well, I suppose I could, yes. So we'd like to get the communications between Statistics Canada and IRCC as to the publication of the non-permanent residents between 2018 and 2023 at the request of the committee.
I think that's your time as well. So thank you, Monsieur Martel. Thank you, Monsieur Brunel-Duceppe. We have 7 minutes left, so I'm going to give 3.5 minutes to the Conservatives and 3.5 minutes to the Liberals. So Mr. Redekop, you're up for 3.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here. Mr. Bellissimo, you spoke in your opening remarks about C-12 and constitutional vulnerability. Could you maybe expand what you were referring to there?
So I think that's in respect to any time we set timelines as it relates to refugee claimants, 14 days, 1 year, you risk losing an individualization of the process. And the fact that they may not then have a hearing before removal, even though they might go through the pre-removal risk assessment process, has constitutional vulnerability, as does some of the potential data sharing that, albeit some of it has now been tabled in C2, but in C12, that kind of data sharing does get into some privacy concerns and risks pushing us back.
So in your opinion, that C-12 is at risk of being constitutionally challenged?
Yes, I believe it is, as it currently reads.
Okay, thank you. You were here, I think, last Parliament a number of years ago, and you talked, I think what I recall the discussion was about approving technology and things like that were needed. And since then, we've had this massive failure on the part of the government with asylum claims and the lack of managing the system, which has led to people being almost compelled to do asylum. And I guess my question for you is, do you see a strain being put on the system partly because of that? And are there some changes that you think should be made in terms of technology?
Yeah, I think, as I referenced in my previous response, I think we need to leverage the technology to control intake versus output. We can have wonderful policy ambition, but if it's not tied to administrative capacity and basically an operational ethos of communication, transparency, and facilitation, we're going to continue to have runaway inventory, disappointed applicants, and basically damage to our global brand. So I think there's a wonderful opportunity leveraging that technology to bring that to ground and move forward in a much more coordinated way.
Part of the needs in a country like Canada is to be able to track people when they exit the country. Do you have any knowledge, or are you aware of any system that Canada uses to maybe track that, or do you think that Canada has the ability to do exit tracking?
Yeah,
1 minute left.
Yeah, they do have. They have an exit and entry system. They do track. CBSA is also developing a new tool called TCI, which is going to potentially use predictive analytics to determine could someone not comply when they enter Canada. These are potentially good initiatives, but we've learned from other countries like New Zealand when they've launched similar technology, it failed and it was found to not be predictive. It was found to be discriminatory. So
if I could just interrupt and you could
Sure.
finish off just kind of explaining the dangers of using AI and some of the, kind of where you're going here. Like, what are the dangers of implementing some of that technology?
The dangers are if the predictive analytics are used in a way that places people in digital prisons that are not unique to them, that are based on widespread characteristics. We move in areas where we've seen internationally, and in some cases in the criminal context here in Canada, where we can run afoul of privacy and proper identification and proper predictive work because the technology is not there yet. That's why we need those guardrails, legislative guardrails.
Thank you, Mr. Bellissimo. Thank you, Mr. Redkop. 3.5 minutes for Mr. Fergus.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Une des choses que j'admire beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. One thing that I really appreciate and to have evidence, data that is evidentiary. You've tracked the first two quarters of the year. In the first quarter, the population of Canada increased by about 20,000 individuals, and Statistics Canada attributed almost 100% to immigration. Is that correct to your thinking? Well, during the very high growth of population growth, 97% of the growth was based on immigration. The contribution, the growth was about 72%. How many persons would that be? Well, I'm sorry, I can't give you that number just off the top. I'm not that good at math. For the first quarter then, January, April, Statistics Canada attributed the growth to the Canadian population at 20,000 individuals. Well, yes, because it was 0.1% of 20,000 individuals is perhaps it's stagnation of the population, in fact. Could you share more recent data on arrivals in Canada? Well, we'll go back a couple of months, and since that time, the household 1.5 the birth rate has fallen to 1.5. Actually 1.25, the number of births by female. And for industrialized countries, what is it, about 2.1% growth birth rate? Well, the replacement rate is 2.2, so. And the rate for granting permanent residence was attached to the fertility rates in Canada. Well, in the absence of immigration, the Canadian population would decrease, and it would decrease and is decreasing because we're under the replacement rate since 1970 rather. So without immigration, Canadian population would diminish and has been diminishing for several decades, which is the case in Japan, for example. What variable or criteria should we be using then to try to reconcile numbers of entrants and immigrants to the rest of the population? Well, in my area of study in demography, we know that 3% increase looks to be very, very high increase in the population, and it causes stress on the infrastructures. Explain that? Well, that's the only way I can answer to the question right now. The levels of immigration at 3% is quite high in demographic terms, statistical terms. If we go back to 1%, that would allow a growth, demographic growth, which would not put an overburden on the infrastructure. Thank you.
For their time and for their excellent testimony today and their patience in answering all of our questions. We are going to suspend for 5 minutes so the witnesses can leave, and we'll get back with a second panel.
LGBTQI+ persecution and its correlation with forced displacement. This persecution varies in severity from discrimination up to death. Chair of the committee, over 60 countries criminalize same-sex intimacy, and in countries such as Uganda and Afghanistan, it is punishable by death. This year, Rainbow Railroad is projecting that we will receive a record number of requests for help from at-risk LGBTQI+ people. We are currently receiving one request every 26 minutes, and over 90% of those requests are for assistance with international relocation to Canada. Within this context, access to asylum pathways remain critical. Canada has developed a strong reputation, a strong global reputation for the advancement of 2S LGBTQIA+ rights, including creating pathways to protection for LGBTQI+ refugee claimants, which contributes to its soft power. This reputation is the direct result of compassionate policy, which leads to life-saving programs for LGBTQI+ people fleeing persecution. One such program is the government-assisted refugee partnerships, with Rainbow Railroad that offers end-to-end LGBTQI+ competent humanitarian protection for queer and trans refugee claimants overseas. Chair of the committee, we offer the following recommendations to improve fairness and efficiency based on our experience working with LGBTQI+ refugee claimants. 1. Hire and train more decision makers and introduce fast-track procedures for clear-cut SOGI-SC cases, which will expedite processing and reduce the current backlog without sacrificing the fairness. 2. Ensure the consistent application of Guideline 9 on SOGI-SC-related IRB proceedings among decision makers. 3. Study Rainbow Railroad's verification protocols that offer nuance and years of expertise in credibility determination of SOGI-SC claims, which can reduce fraudulent claims and costs associated with denying legitimate claims. 4. Expand regional access and increase funding for the GAR partnership with Rainbow Railroad to accommodate more overseas LGBTQI refugee claimants. 5. Remove the proposed provision in Bill C-12 that renders refugee claimants ineligible if they entered Canada after June 24, 2020, and made the claim more than 1 year after the day of their entry. 6. Expedite processing of refugee claimant work permits to reduce reliance on social services while they wait. 7. Ensure universal access to legal aid for inland refugee claimants. 8. Partner with 2S LGBTQI+ competent organizations to develop and deliver trauma-informed care, support, and services for LGBTQI+ refugee claimants. And given the limited time, we will submit a brief to the committee that provides additional context. I thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being brief as well. And who will be speaking on behalf of the Uyghur Project Group? Okay, Mr. Tohi, you have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, we can hear.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Mehmet Tohti, and I serve the Executive Director of Uyghur Rights Advocacy Project, Europe. Europe is a leading Canadian organization that works closely with the Government of Canada to strengthen national response to forced labor, foreign interference, and transnational repression, which can be defined as a state-led efforts to silence, intimidate, and control individuals abroad. Today, I would like to focus on Europe's role as a referral partner to IRCC for the M62 program, through which Canada has committed to accepting 10,000 Uyghur refugees by 2026. This motion, passed in 2023 with unanimous support, represents a historic commitment. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the members of the Parliament present today and their respective leaders, and thank you, and thank you, and thank you to all for your vote and for your leadership. For the recognition of Uyghur genocide, through your vote and through your unanimous vote in resettling Uyghur refugees into Canada. Recent refoulement of 40 Uyghurs to China by Thailand is a shocking reminder that China's pursuit of Uyghur deportation remains active, and upholding Parliament's will, therefore, is crucial. Despite international condemnation from the UN and the dozens of governments, the concentration camps in the Uyghur region remain active, holding up to millions of Uyghurs. Beyond these camps, forced labor, mass surveillance, forced sterilization, and the separation of family and the children continue to define life in the region. Even those who have fled remain unsafe. Around the world, Uyghurs continue to be targeted through transnational oppression and forced deportation, as refoulement remains an ongoing threat. I speak today not only as an advocate, but as a victim of transnational oppression myself. 36 of my family members remain disappeared since 2016, and 5 have died, including my mother and 2 of my sisters. I only learned of their deaths just 2 weeks before the projected vote on M62 on January 16, 2023, when I received a call from Chinese state police, who tried to threaten me by telling tragic deaths of my family members, implying that more to come if I do not stop what I'm doing. But my situation is not unique. It is shared by thousands of Uyghur refugees who look to Canada to uphold the parliamentary will of protecting this vulnerable population. Reaching the target of 10,000 refugees by 2026 is still achievable, but as we have had around 140 arrivals, significant challenges remain ahead. M62 is facing processing delays, maintains a limited annual quota and allocation in the immigration levels plan, making it difficult to meet that 10,000 target. I'm aware that immigration remains a complex issue for both Canadians and our government. It is essential that we ensure our infrastructure and resources remain sustainable amid a growing influx of newcomers. Yet we must balance these practical concerns with Canada's core value of humanitarian protection. The M62 program is an exemplary demonstration of this balance by offering a model of managed humanitarian resettlement of vulnerable Uyghur refugees with the best talents and professional credentials that contribute directly to Canada's development. To explain how so, I would like to introduce briefly my colleague, the project manager of the M62 program, who will share how the incoming refugee represents the best talents that Prime Minister Carney identified in his mandate letter in May address the Cabinet to strengthen the Canadian economy.
We have 1 minute.
Yeah, 1 minute, she can finish.
Good afternoon. My name is Samira, and I have been serving as the project manager of M62 since July of 2024. In this role, I work closely with both caseworkers and administrative staff to ensure the successful execution of the refugee referral process. Uyghur refugees are not only survivors of internment camps, systematic oppression spanning decades, and pervasive surveillance, they are also resilient individuals who have rebuilt their lives after fleeing persecution. Of the 770 applicants we have referred so far, more than half hold higher education degrees in such fields such as business, science, skilled trades, STEM, and social science. Over 80% are of working age, ready to transfer their skills and expertise to Canadian businesses and institutions. Additionally, a significant number of them are bilingual in Canada's official languages and possess proficiency in several others. Lastly, on behalf of the new arrivals, I would like to express their sincere gratitude to the Canadian government for establishing a successful and the only resettlement program in the world that offers Uyghur refugees a lifeline and the opportunity to live in freedom. We call on Parliament and IRCC to increase the allocation of Uyghur refugees under the immigration levels plan to accelerate arrivals and ensure that those most at risk can find safety in Canada without further delay. Thank you, Madam Chair and honorable members. We would be pleased to take your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Demulati, and thank you, Mr. Tohi. Okay, so now we start off with 6-minute rounds, and our first person will be Mr. Menegakis for 6 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all of our witnesses for appearing before us today. Mr. Tohti, first of all, let me express my condolences to you for the 5 family members that you have lost, sir, and deep feelings for the 36 other family members whose whereabouts you are unaware of. In fact, as you know, in 2021, the Canadian Parliament voted in favor of labeling the Uyghur situation truly a genocide. And as you correctly pointed out, in 2022, a private member's motion was passed expediting, 10,000 Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslims coming to Canada. We're almost in 2026. Did I hear correctly? The 10,000 that Parliament approved in 2022, we're like basically about 75 days away from the new year to 2026, and only 140 have come? Is that correct?
That is the correct number till October 16th, and 143. That is the individuals who arrived.
Wow. Yeah. So do you believe that the Liberal government has made this a priority?
Uyghurs around the world extremely pleased when a parliament passed a motion.
Yes.
And we shed tears, and many of them did so.
Yeah.
They find hope. And for the first time, one country opened their arms to accept 10,000 vulnerable refugees. And over the years, and it took some time for IRCC to report back to Parliament and also develop a program and implementation steps. And the program kick-started officially on January 1st, 2024. And now it is almost the end of 2025. And just process, it tells itself. It is slow. And we have enough applicants in our system to be uploaded. Because of the, as I mentioned in my testimony, slow process, and even the total referral of 700 plus people still waiting for to be processed.
Thank you for that. I understand there must be some frustration, obviously, over that. Parliaments and governments can make announcements and pass things, and people get some hope out of that. But at the end of that equation are real people. Real people. In your case, 36 family members, 5 of which have passed away, potentially that could have been saved by having arrived here in Canada. I guess, since we, how many people has Europe, that Europe is helping have actually come to Canada?
We had a referral partner.
Yeah.
So we are the front face of this program, just to communicate with the applicant, and we interview them. We gather information, and we help them to fill out all necessary forms, and we upload eligible applicants determined on the basis of the Geneva Convention and the Canada immigration's relevant regulations. We upload those files to the system.
So what have you seen in processing times?
Yeah.
The time that you engage in helping someone to come over. What's the processing
And
time?
at least
before you actually see them
it didn't take 10 years, and in compared to some other applicants are potentially waiting. Yeah. And some applicants, for example, IRCC really did a good job, and for one applicant, and it took just 40 days to bring that applicant to Canada from the host country. And for some applicants, and they finished their interviews last year, August, and now October, more than 14 months, and still they are waiting. And so it depends case by case, I guess. And I don't know if there's no enough resources, or it is the human resource or other resources.
That begs the question. That begs the
Yeah.
question. Why do you think the Liberal government has not made this a priority? Look, it's not 10 years, but it's been 4 years since 2022 in just a few months. Okay? And there's people at the other end. Can you shed some light as to the conditions with which those people are living, waiting to come to Canada?
Yeah, Uyghurs, as I said, they're facing a transnational oppression by China, the second most powerful country. Just the China is launching Uyghur Hunt program. And whoever travels to some places, there's just many countries, in order to get some concession from China or economic benefits, they sell Uyghurs. They use Uyghur refugees as commodities. The Thailand, for example, they deported 40 Uyghurs back to China, and after 1 week, China announced to invest $8 billion to Thailand.
So we're talking about people with mass detention, torture and abuse, forced assimilation, forced labor, forced sterilization, separation from their families, and the government of Canada has been so helpful that has made an announcement. We're going to take 10,000 people in. and we've allowed 143 while these people, real people, okay, are suffering and waiting to come. People that were given some hope in 2022 that, hey, someone is going to help us. 4 years later, they're still waiting. They're not getting help. They're dying in these situations, 5 of which are members of your family, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Menegakis. That is
you.
your time. And thank you, Mr. Tohti. Next, we have 6 minutes with Mr. Zuberi.
Thank you to both witnesses for being here today and for the bravery of what you're doing. I'm going to focus my questions on Mr. Tohti, given my work on Uyghur advocacy. And I want to pick up on the first theme. You mentioned that 140 arrivals, over 140 men, women, and children have come to Canada from dire and trying situations. Can you share with us what is their sentiment? How are they feeling now that they're here in Canada?
I remember last time, 3 weeks ago, we went to GTA area, just visit the number of new arrivals. And you witnessed the people's feeling, and for the first time they expressed that we truly understand what's the meaning of safety. At least we go to bed, and we know that we can wake up in the morning without any police raid or any detention to the deportation centers. That is the general feeling of the people. And also, immigration and other stuffs, step-by-step planning and the arrangement really touched their heart. And they feel that for the first time, and we feel that there is a humanity alive. And so they have a mixed message, and grateful at the same time, the kind of relief, at the same time find hope. Especially, I'm telling this for the new arrivals.
Certainly, and you made reference to that you and I actually have both met about, I personally have met about 4 dozen of the arrivals, and the dominant sentiment was deep gratitude to Canadians for the first time tasting safety and security, whereas they never had tasted it before, and a great relief, as you said. That is a dominant sentiment, would you say?
Yes.
I remember in conversation with the 4 dozen that many were highly skilled and highly educated. Do you want to, either 2 of the witnesses from the Uyghur Rights Advocacy Project, if you'd like to speak about how this set of people, their skill set as professionals and as educated people, can you describe that a little bit for us?
If you live under occupation by China and you have to compete and you have to get much more skill than ordinarily Chinese in order to get a job. And most of the Uyghur situation exactly reflect on that. And so they worked really hard and they got necessary skills, but they couldn't live in peace in their homeland. So, and for those arrivals, as you could remember, there are engineers and the journalists and the writers and healthcare professionals. All of them, most of them are university graduates and successful business person. And so they are highly skilled immigrants, and some of them already got a job just within a couple of months. And some of them already start to operate in their small businesses. And so I think when they see such a place that comfort them, they put all efforts to contribute to society that made them safe. And that gratitude and appreciation now translated into their efforts and how we become a better Canadians, how we can contribute to this wonderful society.
On Tuesday, we heard from the Deputy Minister, and he said, in addition to the over 140 who are here today in safety and security, that there are also over 740 applications that have been processed. What are you hoping to see with those 740 applications that have been processed? How quickly are you hoping to see them arrive to Canada? And what needs to be done for that to happen?
I check that email system at least 10 times a day, just with the hope to see that at least one announcement or one information about one approved applicants. So it is the process that people in host countries are waiting, and at the same time we are waiting here. And most importantly, the people in the immigration should take this message. And we have enough vulnerable candidates in our system. We can upload within a single day. More than 3,000 people in our system. We already collected their own information. We evaluated their situation. And the 700 application, just we referred to IRCC to process since last year, July. And so it is in their possession, and I hope the process as soon as possible.
And you mentioned that you have, in addition to what actually IRCC testified before the Deputy Minister testified in terms of 140 plus arrivals and 740 plus that have been processed. You mentioned that you have also others who are vulnerable, deeply vulnerable, who are fit within the 10,000 will of our Parliament here in Canada. That fit within that will. And you have others who are deeply vulnerable who have been identified and are ready to reach safety and security. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
I think my 6 minutes is done.
I think that is over. Thank you so much, Mr. Zuberi. And thank you for being timely. Et après, maintenant, on a 6 minutes pour Monsieur Brunel-Duceppe, s'il vous plaît.
6 minutes, Mr. Brunet. Well, thank you to our witnesses, and I'm sorry, we'll have to continue, Mr. Tohti, and we'll come back to you momentarily. I know you're just involved with Motion 62. I'm glad to have my friend as a witness here today. We'll stick to some facts. It's 143 are here now on Canadian soil for the Uyghur refugee issue. And 170 or 740 that are processed applicants.
We don't know. It should be being processed, but we don't know whether it is processed or not. At least we know that we referred those numbers to IRCC already.
Parfait. Et tout ça, ce programme-là.
Very good. And normally this progress was to supposedly come to an end in 2025, December.
The program, according to parliamentary motion, it should start from January 2024 and end at the end of 2025, and a 2 years program. And just we have a month and a half left. And how many they can process, I don't know.
Clairement, puis je veux pas être plate là, mais
clearly, we won't attain that target that the government had proposed, 10,000. We would like to get to 10,000, but if we have a deadline and a month and a half away, it's not going to happen. Why not extend? We could possibly extend that deadline until we do achieve the 10,000. Would that be a recommendation to the committee?
Option we have right now, because month and a half left, and that 10,000 numbers was referred by immigration at the beginning when we discussed the motion, and our recommended numbers was much higher, and this 10,000 came from the Minister of Immigration's office at that time. Let's do something achievable. The 10,000 is achievable, and we agreed. And now even I'm saddened to see that the Minister of IRCC is not upholding its own promise.
Donc, je comprends qu'ils vous ont fait baisser vos attentes.
So I see that they reduced your expectations by reducing that. We're going to say 10,000 because it is attainable. But today we can see that we have 143 guaranteed in Canada now. But that's all. And I was glad to hear that what the sentiment was of these individuals who did arrive successfully here, a feeling of security and hope. Now, you're also in contact with a number of individuals who are outside Canada and who wish to be on that list. How are they feeling about it? What are their hopes?
Messages from WhatsApp or email or Facebook Messenger all the time, every day, and they ask whether the program stopped. And every day also we receive messages of that court order to deport Uyghurs back to China. And 3 days ago I received such a court order from the one country. And also during this process, 6 Uyghurs whose application are being in the middle of processing, deported to third countries. And we shared some of the information with IRCC immediately. And so now the Chinese influence is growing, and in Central Asia, Balkans, and other areas. And the countries also, in order to get some sort of incentives from China, they are using the Uyghur refugees to deport them to make China please or attract some investment. That is the official human trafficking, human bargaining that is happening right now.
Et quand vous parlez, vous êtes en contact avec IRCC.
When you say you're in contact with the IRCC, when you talk with them, what signals are they giving you? Do you have the impression that they're willing to extend the program, perhaps?
Importantly, I don't think they are the one who make this decision, and they implement the decision made by some other the higher authorities. And so our contact is mostly the high-level bureaucrats or mid-level bureaucrats who are managing this program and the professional people.
Et on n'a pas d'écho de la nouvelle ministre de l'Immigration.
And not a word yet from the current minister as to this particular program? Well, we're going to ask them to answer you anyway. Hopefully they will be in touch. And in closing, Mr. Totsi, has the government given any kind of explanation why the system seems to be clogged or bottlenecked? Why not the 10,000?
It is about the prioritization of the Canada's immigration intake, and I have been advocating for diversification of our immigration policy instead of concentrating on certain group and create a big area.
Thank you, Mr.
Diversify
I'm
our,
sorry to cut you off, but I think it's time right now, Monsieur. Merci, Monsieur Brunel-Duceppe. Thank you, Mr. Torti. Now, because we have to have a shortened round, simply because we do have to break at 5:15 to discuss committee business, I'm going to give the remaining time. We'll have 3 minutes for the Conservatives, 3 minutes for the Liberals, and 1.5 minutes for the Bloc Québécois. So I believe we have Mr. Davies for the Conservatives, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Tolti, I just want to confirm, did you tell me that there have been Uyghurs that have been in the queue here in Canada that have been deported?
Not from Canada.
Not from Canada. So there's been no applicants that have gone through the process that have had to leave the country?
I was referring about applicants we already uploaded to IRCC system, but during that period of time, they were deported. For the safety of that person, I'm not going to mention the specific country that they deported, but I can share privately that information.
So the commitment for 10,000 people to come to Canada, we're looking right now at about 700 in the queue, I think you said?
Yeah, yes, our uploading process still continuing, and that 770 plus is already referred.
Sorry to interrupt you, but you believe those are the ones that have been approved so far?
I don't know.
I
don't know. We did not receive that information.
So do you have any exact information of the number of applicants that are in IRCC process waiting now?
That 770 plus is already in their system, and so 143 is already arrived. And every day, people are still uploading files.
Okay, I don't have a whole lot of time, so I'm sorry about this, but so less than 10% of the overall objective has been achieved by the likely end of this program.
Yeah, maybe 5-6%.
I know you're trying to walk a fine line here, not to be too critical of the government, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the government's performance on this policy?
The passage of motion was the parliamentary work, all party the work together, all MPs. That is the solidarity of all political parties.
I get that,
And for the governments, especially for the implementation, as I said, it is a huge issue for Canada and the government as well, the immigration is. And I am frustrated and disappointed.
So you wouldn't really say that this program has been one of success
and
for
a
Canadian
big promise. Actually, when this the M62 was passed in the Parliament, all international media, BBC, and all Western media, all reported. It was a huge news for international communities just to praise Canada, how they react against China, and standing up to oppressed people. And now we forgot that momentum.
Okay, so I think...
Thank you so much, Mr. Davies. And now we turn for 3 minutes to Mr. Fragiscatos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In light of the fact that the motion that led to what we're discussing today largely is Mr. Zuberi's, I'm giving him the time.
Mr. Zuberi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I will ask you if you're familiar with the Wilson Center report that was titled "The Great Wall of Steel: China's Global Campaign to Suppress the Uyghurs." And if you're aware that it noted from 1997 to January 2002, there were 1,574 documented cases, we're only talking about known cases, of Uyghurs who were refooled back to China from third countries, and that the vast overwhelming majority ended up in the concentration camps and forced labor camps.
Where and that was the number till 2021. And Bradley Jardine, the author of that report, and who is my good friend, actually, Uyghur Rights Advocacy Project also shared some information about.
Thank you. We only have 2 minutes. Yeah. So the next thing I'd like to know is from you and your advocacy. Are the concentration camps still ongoing? Are people still at danger of being refooled from third countries back to China into forced labor and gross and serious crimes against humanity?
It is ongoing. That's the reason Chinese government is not allowing any independent journalists to the region. Instead, they create a Potemkin village, and ask journalists to just go there and to see the staged show.
Thank you. And based upon this, would you recommend that IRCC, as a result of that, expedite the existing 740 applications due to the grave and serious human rights concerns that each and every one of these applicants are going through right now in terms of potential refoulement back to China to concentration camps? Do you believe that they should be expedited?
They should do that, because if they forget, they should read the preamble of the M62 motion. There are 3 lines, and it's still valid.
Secondly, do you recommend that IRCC open up the portal so that, because it's currently closed, you recommend that they open up the portal so that the remaining applications you have in hand of equally vulnerable people who are at risk of refoulement to concentration camps and also torture and other crimes against humanity, that be reopened by IRCC?
Portal is open, but there is a quota, the annual quota, and so if there is no quota, we can upload those files.
I thought the portal's open, but there's a quota. Do you recommend that quota be lifted to reach the 10,000
immediately? They should lift
last
that quota.
question in my remaining few seconds. Do you believe that? Do you require resources in order to make this happen? In order, as a referral partner, official referral partner from the Government of Canada, do you require increased resources to fulfill their mission mandate and have 10,000?
We have to recall some of the fired employees back just to expedite uploading the remaining part of the file.
Thank you, Mr. Torti. Then we have now 1.5 minutes for Monsieur Brunet-Duceppe.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Madame Alcati, vous n'avez pas eu de questions. Je vous laisse une
Going
minute et
to
demie.
allow our second witness, to say whatever she wants to say. She didn't have much of a chance to. Well, thank you very much.
I mean, if I want to use this minute and a half in a smart way, I would say We acknowledge that the system of immigration in Canada is under a lot of stress. Is really it's hard. It's hard to figure out how to make it better. But we keep reminding the government of Canada that partnerships like the one, for example, between like the GAR with Rainbow Railroad is one that is globally cherished because it is one. It's a one way to let asylum seekers and people in need of protection and vulnerable groups like the LGBTQI+ people find safety. You cannot know enough. I cannot stress enough how much LGBT people around the world who comes to Canada are grateful for the opportunity, are grateful for the system in Canada that allows them to be themselves, to live in peace. And yes, there are a lot of things that we can do together between partnerships as well with civil society. Thank you so much.
Merci.
Et merci, Monsieur Alexis.
Ça fait plaisir. On peut dire à la témoin qu'elle peut déposer aussi un mémoire.
We should also advise the witness that she can offer us a written brief as well.
Thank you as well to our third witness. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. Ms. Dilmulati. I know you didn't have any questions, but I knew you were with us in spirit. Thank you. Excellent testimony. And I just want to say a huge thanks to both of you and to everyone for their excellent questions. We're now going to suspend for 5 to 10 minutes. So 3 minutes so witnesses can leave and we can move to in-camera discussion. you.